Hello everybody, this is attorney Chris DeBerry with CDB Injury Law going live to you today. We're going to talk a little bit about PIP today. Okay, so I'm glad you all tuned in. Thank you again, and please feel free to watch my videos under my program Legal Ease, which is on YouTube, which you can tune into for information. But today we're going to talk about PIP. So what is PIP? Many people who come to Florida come from states who have a system of automobile injury reimbursement, which is called an at-fault system. In an at-fault system, people who cause accidents are then responsible to reimburse all of the injured parties' medical bills and other requirements, future medicals, past medicals, lost wages, and so forth. Florida is a little bit different. Florida operates on what is called a no-fault paradigm or model. A no-fault system is one where the person who causes the accident, while they're responsible for causing the accident, so when they say no fault in Florida, they don't mean that nobody's at fault. It simply means that no matter who's at fault in the accident, your own insurance company's auto policy is going to provide the first $10,000 of medical bill reimbursement for you. Now, the purpose of this is so that you can obtain quick medical treatment without having to wait for the other side to determine that they're responsible and pay you money. A lot of the time you have to wait a long time for that to happen because insurance companies are very contentious. They are trying to protect their insureds, and they often have a duty to defend their claims, and that duty is broader than their duty to indemnify and pay claims. So in a no-fault state like Florida, you are actually you've bargained for, you've paid premium in your insurance policy, and what that premium got you is $10,000 of money to reimburse for your first $10,000 of medical bills, no matter who's at fault in the accident. So in Florida, if you hear somebody say no fault, they're either talking about divorce or they're talking about PIP. Now, what does PIP cover? PIP covers injuries that occur when people are involved with accidents and the motor vehicle has four wheels and is self-propelled. Now, there is an exception to this rule, so anybody's thinking that they can get PIP for a golf cart accident, you can't. Golf carts, while they're on four wheels and maybe self-propelled and gas engines inside of them, they are not covered under PIP, so there's an exception. Additionally, motorcycles are two-wheeled vehicles and they fail to fall under the definition of PIP, and while those who drive regular automobiles must have PIP as part of their insurance coverage. In fact, you can't write an auto policy for insureds in Florida without it containing a couple of basic things. It has to have, first, no-fault insurance or PIP, and second, it has to have property damage insurance. Now, they call that full coverage, even though it's really not. It's simply the mandatory minimum that every driver has to carry to be allowed to operate their motor vehicles in Florida and not have their licenses suspended by Tallahassee in case they don't. In fact, oftentimes when people allow their no-fault benefits to lapse, their information will be reported to Tallahassee. Tallahassee will send out a notice, and your license could be potentially suspended for a period of time until you acquire the proper insurance responsibility with PIP and property damage. So that's very, very important to know. And what does PIP provide for you? It provides $10,000 automatically. That's what the statute's required, $10,000. Now, $10,000 would apply to anybody who is either injured and owns a car. If you own a car and you're injured in a motor vehicle accident, then your PIP will pay your $10,000 for your medical bills. If you don't own a car, but a member of your household owns a car, then you may qualify for PIP under their auto policy. Another scenario is that suppose you don't own a car and don't live with anybody that has PIP insurance, you can then get PIP from the driver of the vehicle or the owner of the vehicle that you were in when the accident happened. And that's very, very important to know. So PIP is going to cover your medical expenses, your medical treatment, transport, diagnostic tests, hospitalization, surgical services, and as long as these are deemed reasonable in cost, medically necessary, and related to the accident, then PIP is liable to reimburse. So remember those three: reasonable, medically necessary, and related to the accident. Those are the buzzwords. Those three things have to exist for PIP benefits to become payable by your insurance company. I've had clients talk to me over the years and say, well, why does my insurance company have to pay my first $10,000 of bills? That's just the way Florida worked its scheme of reimbursement out, and for good reason. As I explained before, the only obligation an injured person has in the state of Florida is to mitigate their damage. The only way that you can mitigate your damage is to seek appropriate diagnosis and appropriate treatment. And it's important to do it quickly. Most of the injuries that people suffer in motor vehicle accidents aren't readily obvious to the human eye. Some of the soft tissue damage, internal damage, damages to the spine, the most delicate structures of your body, they're all internal and they're all invisible until you can see them with an MRI or with a CT scan. But for the most part, these things can go unnoticed. It's why people will get into an accident and the adrenaline is rushing and they feel okay, and then the adrenaline wears off and the next morning they can't move. So they go to the ER or they go to the doctors and they start doing what they're supposed to do, which is make themselves better. So that's really the reason that PIP exists. And the limits of PIP traditionally are $10,000. However, only 80% of the medical bills are covered under PIP, up to $10,000. So, for example, if a medical expense or your total medical expenses equaled exactly $10,000 by some miracle, PIP would cover $8,000 of that. The rest of that would be the patient's responsibility, and usually one of the things that we go after the at-fault driver to pay for. So that is PIP reimbursing at 80% of your medical bills, up to the $10,000 limit. And sometimes people who purchase auto policies may purchase a deductible. Now, deductibles are good because with a deductible, you can reduce the amount of your insurance premium. So that's why we have deductibles. And I often see a $500 deductible on a PIP policy or $1,000. You're used to seeing them more on your car repair bills because people generally always take some kind of collision deductible. But they also exist in PIP. So if you had a $1,000 deductible on your PIP, then you have $9,000 to pay your medical bills at 80%. But in addition to covering medical bills, it would also cover 60% of your provable lost wages up to that amount of money. So you can have a combination of $10,000 in medical bills paid by PIP, combine $10,000 and 60% of lost wages up to $10,000, or you can reserve your PIP for one thing or the other. As long as the insurance adjuster is made aware, they can consider reserving your PIP strictly for medicals if you want, or strictly for lost wages if you want. Then you may go after the other driver for all of your medicals in that situation. So there's a little bit of flexibility in how to use the PIP benefits that are afforded to you. Now, PIP will cover also a death benefit of up to $5,000. So there's a $5,000 death benefit to a person who is covered under PIP who dies as a result of a motor vehicle accident. Unfortunate, but it does happen sometimes. And PIP at least makes some provision for people who lose their lives and for their families and so forth. Now, PIP is actually a pretty good idea. A lot of people want to get rid of it because they want to see a scheme where there's automatic bodily injury liability. And then there's a certain reason that's a good idea too, because you would like for anybody who hits you to have bodily injury liability insurance so that you can pursue them for your out-of-pocket medical bills, your past lost wages, future lost wages, your future medical needs, your pain and suffering. So if they've got good bodily injury liability, then that's always good for the person trying to recover. However, in the state of Florida, mandatory bodily injury is not something that exists yet under the statutes. Now, there are a lot of people lobbying for it, and eventually I think it's going to pass, but right now we don't have that. But we do have the PIP in place now, which would probably go away or exist in a different form if bodily injury liability were to become a reality. Now, PIP's been around for decades, and the purpose of PIP was always to get you immediate medical attention and so forth, get you treated for your injuries so that the healing process could begin so that you can be helped and your pain can be relieved and you can feel better going to work, and those are all great reasons to do it. Traditionally, you could go to any doctor you wanted to go to. I mean, if you could go to an acupuncturist, you'd be able to go to a witch doctor. You can do whatever you wanted depending on your beliefs and what you think works for you. Some people like MDs and DOs. Some people prefer to go to chiropractic. Some people like acupuncturists. And traditionally, this used to be okay. under changes in the law that were made in PIP in 2012, that sort of changed a little bit. In fact, it changed a lot. A couple of requirements were thrown into PIP that didn't exist before. First of all, massage therapy is no longer covered under the statutory scheme of reimbursement for PIP. Neither is acupuncture. Not fair, doesn't make a lot of sense, because the type of injuries people typically suffer and the kind of motor vehicle accident that occurs the most of the time are those that are susceptible to being treated by acupuncture and being treated by massage. But the legislature, in its wisdom, did that. So the changes we saw in 2012 to the PIP statute. The most important of those changes is a limitation on the time that you're actually allowed to seek PIP benefits to be reimbursed. So under Florida law, as of 2012, unless you seek medical treatment from a licensed provider that can bill PIP within the first 14 days of the motor vehicle accident, your insurance company will have no obligation to pay PIP benefits on your part, and they probably won't. So you have to treat within the first 14 days in order for PIP to be payable. Additionally, there's a new creature that was sort of introduced into the statute that we'd never seen before either. It's called an emergency medical condition, or an EMC. Now, traditionally under PIP, you were allotted $10,000 of reimbursement, which would be paid at 80% for your medical bills. However, under the 2012 changes to the statute, they introduced a requirement that unless you are diagnosed with an emergency medical condition, unless you have that diagnosis made by a qualified physician, you're only entitled to $2,500 of your PIP, which really doesn't make any sense, but unfortunately that's what the legislature did. So if you were seeking more than $2,500 in reimbursement, you would have to have your case reviewed by a physician or go be examined by a physician that's qualified to make a emergency medical condition. You know, some of them would seem obvious: a broken arm, a herniated disc in the spine. However, it doesn't matter. Unless those buzzwords exist in a medical report, they can deny paying your PIP up to its full extent until they're provided with an EMC report. So what is an EMC, an emergency medical condition? Well, it's defined in the Florida statutes as any injury which, if left untreated, would reasonably be expected to cause serious jeopardy to the person's health, serious impairment of any bodily function, or serious dysfunction of a part or organ. Now, please keep in mind that while you must seek initial treatment within the first 14 days after the accident, the EMC finding does not have to be made within the first 14 days. That could be made at any time after the accident happens by a qualified physician. Now, that's basically the way PIP works in Florida. Now, you don't usually see a check from your insurance company come to you when you are seeking reimbursement under PIP. Generally, your medical providers who provide the treatment for you will enter into an agreement with you called an assignment of benefits. And what that assignment of benefits usually includes is a provision that allows your medical providers to bill the insurance company directly on your behalf. You've assigned your right to collect payment. You've assigned your right for the doctor to be paid directly from the insurance company so that you're not the middleman in that process. And it does make things a lot easier. In fact, if medical providers have to litigate a PIP benefit on your behalf, you're not on the hook, the doctor is. And his attorneys will file suit on his behalf, and you as the plaintiff will be sort of left out of all of that, which can sometimes be ugly. In addition to the statutory PIP, which is the $10,000, you can also, if you want to up your coverage and provide better coverage for yourself, you can contract with your insurance company for contractual benefits. One in particular is called MedPay, or medical payment coverage. MedPay supplements your PIP. You pay extra for it, but if you say have $10,000 in PIP, you may buy $5,000, $10,000 in medical payment coverage, have 100% of your medical bills paid for, not just 80%. But the only difference between the statutory PIP and MedPay is you don't ever have to pay the PIP back. You've already paid for that out of your premiums, you get it. MedPay is a contractual coverage which allows the insurance companies a right of subrogation or reimbursement. They're allowed to get some of their money back or all their money back for med payments made as long as you make a recovery against the third party or the at-fault party in an accident. So those are some basics about PIP, and it can be a pretty complicated subject. I've litigated PIP cases for close to 17, 18 years, and for little cases, they seem to cause sometimes a lot of problems. But you know, we're experienced in doing this kind of litigation, and we're certainly able to answer your questions. And I would urge you, if you have any questions, to phone me at 727-656-7852, or email me at chris@cdbinjurylaw.com. I would love to answer your questions and talk to you about your accidents, about your PIP benefits, or anything else legally you'd like to talk about. But folks, thank you very much for tuning in today. I really do appreciate it. And if you get a chance, jump onto YouTube and check out a couple of my videos under Legal Ease, my educational program. Now, that program is not intended to give legal advice, but it does make you aware of what the law is and what you can do to protect yourself, and what kind of coverages and insurance you can purchase to make sure that you and your family have what you need in case something bad were to happen. But folks, thank you again very much for dropping by. I hope you have a lovely week, and I hope this gorgeous weather continues to be gorgeous. And you too. Thank you very much.